everyone, my name is Libby and I am here today to talk to you about the different types of looms used for tablet weaving and what they are good for, what some of the challenges are when using the different types, and where they came from. We are in my bedroom working, so sorry y'all, this is what I have when we're all stuck at home in quarantine zone, but I hope this is still helpful for you. So we're going to take a look. These are There are two really broad categories you can divide tablet weaving looms into. There are those that use a circular warp, where the band runs around the loom, comes back, and ties to itself, where you are literally going to weave a circle. That category is commonly called Inca looms. They come in lots of different sizes. Large ones, this guy does, the one with the blue, does about 5.5 yards, from a medium size, small custom shapes and sizes of any variety, and little teeny tiny baby looms. These you will commonly hear referred to as Inca looms. They were invented about the 19th century. So if you are trying to use something for medieval reenactment or for the SCA, these are out of period. They're not quite what you're going for, but they are very practical. They're very portable. Everything is stabilized on the loom itself. I have taken to tying a little bag on my loom with holding my extra thread, my shuttle, things like that, so that when I am taking these around places, then I don't have to worry about that stuff getting lost. They're absolutely phenomenal, fantastic practical tools. If you are trying to work on a project that uses only 2 holes in the cards or 3 holes and things where the cards like to flop around, you can actually sling a little hammock from here to here for the cards to rest on, and that'll stop them flopping around if that's something you're running into. You are limited on length to the length the loom will hold. This one is actually capped out. I could maybe put just a little bit more on here, but it would be very tough because you can only go as far as the pegs allow and as far as how many pegs you have. The more pegs you have, the more wraps you can do. But the more pegs you then have to be able to slide over, and you're going to want your pegs smooth enough to slide pretty easy there. If you have really rough pegs, you need to potentially sand and or even polish them with maybe a little bit of wax. You don't want to use necessarily sealant, and you want to make sure whatever you're using is not going to come off and stain your threads. Now, historical accuracy. If you are going for the most historically accurate possible loom you could get, that is this guy. This big thing right here in the front is called an Augsburg loom, and it is literally 2 pegs, a horizontal bar holding them at a fixed distance, and feet so that they stand upright. This dates from very early period in the SCA to 16th century. We see them in illuminations, we see them in paintings. They're very, very common to see women, especially in a religious setting, even sitting and working on a loom like this. My particular one is very simple. It's actually banister frames from Lowe's and a wooden bar running through them and 2 little wooden pegs that hold the entire thing together. This is your most period accurate thing. It has some downsides. It is not very portable. You guys, I have a queen size bed. That takes up the entire width of my bed. Now, it comes apart very easily, and when I take it apart, I can slide the entire thing into a single long bag that's about the size of a pool cue bag. But now I have to take the warp off, and I have to put the warp back on, and I have to reset it up if I want to move it. These are fantastic tools if you're not going to be moving your project around, if you're not going to be taking it to events and bringing it back home. They also can be harder to tension. On these modern Inca looms, you have this nice little tension bar, usually right here, one of these 2 places. Sometimes you'll see them elsewhere on the loom, but they're a sliding peg that lets you exactly tweak your tension at a moment's notice. Just loosen up your bar, slide it, tighten or loosen, you're good. To retension something like an Augsburg frame loom, you have to actually untie one end of the warp and retie it onto the loom. That's more period. It is a little bit more work. They come in lots of varieties. So these I've actually started making. Super simple. It's a board with 2 pegs. This is the same thing as an Augsburg loom. It's just short. It works the same kind of functionality. I've got several of them done that way. These are fantastic for teaching or taking or displaying pieces on, where it's a board and 2 pegs. Again, I have taken to tying bags on that are holding my tools so that I don't lose them or run out of thread when I'm going places. These have kind of grown into board looms of all kinds of different styles. Really commonly, you'll see one that uses some collection of pieces at the end to tension the band and hold that tension there. Not necessarily. You can see ones that just have a horizontal peg. This is actually my favorite loom to work with. You tie onto one side, you tie onto the other. You can see where I had a project here, and you just weave. Excess threads are just wrapped around the end, and the tension comes from managing the band itself. This particular one I have actually used as a warp weighted loom as well by running the bands over this end and making sure this is really smooth down here, letting them hang off the back with little clay weights on each threads. The last style of loom that we're going to talk about, it uses the same kind of measuring system as, or same kind of warp system, as the Asperger frame loom, and it is a box loom. This is very late Renaissance. You start seeing something very similar to this. We usually saw it used with rigid heddles, where you've got the heddle in the middle that goes up and down and generates a tabby band instead of a tablet woven band. But it is a plausible tool to use for that. These function with a spinning dowel on one side and the other, and the warp wraps around one. As you weave, the woven band gets wrapped around the other end. These are also very portable, very practical. Your challenge with these, your downside, is this is your working length. This is as much space as you have to push twist. If you are working on a pattern that is not twist neutral, these can be a problem because there's nowhere for that twist to go. You either need to plan a reversal of the pattern so that you can get all of that twist out within this section, or do patterns that are like 4 forward, 4 backwards, are more twist neutral. When you are dealing with a circle loom, there are all kinds of ways people have come up with to deal with twist. Again, you can go for patterns that are twist neutral or reversals. Some people put fishing swivels down here at the bottom of the band, and then they will push the twist down the band until it gets to that end, and then the swivel will literally spin and release the twist. That works well if you're working on maybe a 3-yard or a 1.5-yard smaller loom. If you're working with 5.5 yards of thread and a pattern that builds up a lot of twist, that's going to get to be a problem fairly quickly because you're going to be sliding your hands and fingers constantly through 5 yards of thread. If you are working with wool, that is not going to work. Wool, if you've messed with it much at all, likes to pill and grab and snag on itself. So the more you're running your fingers through the middle of it, the more friction you're creating on the band and the more that's going to be a problem. However, these guys, if you're working on an Asperg style loom where the band goes in one direction and stops, you can just push the twist to the end. So things like this particular one had a very short warp, so it's just looped around the peg. I could just untie that and slide my fingers out the end, twist is gone. If I had a longer length, I would actually wind those end pieces around bobbins, like the soft Kumihimo plastic bobbins, and then you just run your fingers to the bobbin spins around, twist is gone, and you can keep on weaving and wrap your finished band around up here. Thank you so much. I will be uploading this one to YouTube very shortly. And after that, we are going to look at warping up a straight warp. That's what I'm going to call all of these types of looms. Use a warp that goes in one direction from finish to end instead of a circle. Last week we looked at warping up circular looms. This week we're going to look at warping up straight looms. Thank you guys so much.